Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky, Rob Pelinka gets him some Executive of the Year love, and the summer for Luka begins. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how, where you get your podcasts, this one's always free, never behind a paywall. And of course, Locked On Lakers on YouTube, as we're over 35,000 subscribers, Andy, are all hanging out and getting ready for what is going to be a critical offseason of building around Luka Dončić. It is the summer for Luka, not necessarily the summer of Luka, but definitely the summer for him. We're going to start getting into that. But before we do, Andy, Rob Pelinka getting a little bit of love from his fellow executives in the Executive of the Year voting, like JJ Redick. Didn't win, but finished in that sort of top group. Even got a vote for first. Pretty impressive.
It was actually pretty serendipitous because they both finished sixth overall. So that, I guess you could say they are truly aligned. We've heard a lot heading into this offseason and at the beginning of the JJ Redick, Rob Pelinka era that they were on the exact same page, aligned. So they're even getting the exact same amount of Coach of the Year or Exec of the Year voting and finish. It's interesting. Like you and I think it was a few weeks ago. I don't remember how it came up, but we were talking about Exec of the Year. Maybe it was on the heels of Rob Pelinka getting his extension from the Lakers, the news of that breaking. And, the idea of whether Rob Pelinka would ever win Exec of the Year. And I said then, and I still think now, I think Rob would have to do some of the best executive work imaginable. Like, for example, Sam Presti is the actual winner. And for my money, I would say he's the best exec in the league. And I think the Thunder are arguably the best run organization in the NBA. I've thought that for a while. I think just in terms of what they are able to continually accomplish, whether they are looking to contend, whether they are looking to rebuild, and also working from the disadvantage of a small marketplace, I just think they're exceptionally well run, exceptionally smart. But Rob Pelinka would have to do stuff that basically Sam Presti wouldn't even dream of imaginable, I think, to win Exec of the Year, simply because from everything I've heard from multiple sources, he is not particularly enjoyed by his peers.
No, especially now.
and I think stuff like that, it plays a role.
Because it's not a media voted award. It's a colleagues voted award. So, Rob Pelinka got one vote for Executive of the Year. There are a lot of people who are just assuming it was Nico Harrison who voted for him. I don't know if that's true or not. But I agree with you.
It's definitely not Nico Harrison. He thinks Rob Pelinka is an idiot for taking on Luka Dončić. Like, that's the one guy we know didn't vote.
He got hoodwinked.
Yeah, no, I mean, we know that Nico thinks anybody who gets in the Luka Dončić business is a fool. So
Nico voted for himself.
I don't know who voted for Rob, but I damn sure know it was not Nico.
And I think there are two things there. The first thing is, I agree with you. The personality thing matters. I also think it's just really hard to win that award when you work for the Lakers. Sam Presti, I think Presti got it this year as sort of a cumulative acknowledgement of the work that the Thunder have been doing over the past 2 or 3 seasons. It's not so much that he was so outstanding this year relative to other seasons. It's that
he did good work, though.
He did. I mean, it was all basically in the preseason. The Thunder didn't do anything at the deadline or anything like that. They put that team together and won a lot of games. And so I think it's sort of an acknowledgement of he's the best at this in the league. and look at what they've done. And I don't have a problem with it. What I think is interesting about Rob is evaluating his season. And we'll get into this in a lot of ways over the course of the summer, but obviously the day the executive of the year voting comes out is a good day to talk about like what kind of year Pelinka had and how it was different or not different than other seasons. And I think, when you look at the idea that Rob would have finished in the top 6 for executive of the year in early October would have been laughable, because the Lakers were coming off a fairly, I'm not going to say disastrous offseason, but a monumentally disappointing one in which they made no moves because they couldn't. They were put in a box of Rob Pelinka's making. And that kept them from making any improvements. They didn't do anything stupid because couldn't do anything. And so they go into the season. The big change they make was JJ Redick. We were all sort of, you and I were confident, thought it was a pretty good hire. But obviously you have to wait and see. They did try really hard to hire Dan Hurley from UConn. And I am curious about Earth 2, where Dan Hurley took the job.
Sure. And you and I, in the moment, neither of us were against the JJ Redick hiring, but he was not either of our first choices.
I don't remember who was my first choice. David Adelman, I think it was.
Yes, David Adelman was yours. Mike Inori was mine.
By the way, that's Nuggets are making that look like a good choice. So I mean, I'd forgotten so much of that conversation, but yeah, I think it was. If I had my druthers, as they say, I would have picked Adelman. And Redick was an extremely Lakers choice. He was an extremely Rob Pelinka type choice. It didn't really get away from the star bleeper kind of problems that Lakers have had over the years. Now, I think they read it correctly, because Redick has turned into, I think, a good coach, playoff issues notwithstanding. He had a really good first season, I think. Rob, they came off a bad trade deadline and a bad offseason where they sort of overpromised and underdelivered, and then got into the season. And I think that's where Rob did well, even setting aside the Luka stuff, the DFS trade, picking up Jordan Goodwin, things like that. Like
drafting Dalton Connect, which
sure.
I realized Dalton fell to them, but as we saw in the previous year with Jalen Hood-Schifino, you can either misevaluate a prospect or outthink the obvious. And this, whether Rob Pelinka was the driving force behind Dalton Connect, or if it was Joey and Jesse Buss, the scouting department, whatever, like all the things that happened under Rob Pelinka's watch, he either gets credit for or he gets dinged for. That is the way this stuff works for all execs across the league. And frankly, in sports, he's the one who oversees it all. So he's the one that ultimately takes responsibility for it all. And Dalton Connect so far seems like a good pick for that slot. Like I was thinking about and looking at the guys drafted around Connect, and other than maybe Yves Missi in New Orleans, there's nobody in his pretty close vicinity.
He had a nice rookie season.
Yeah, there's nobody in his immediate vicinity that I'm currently concerned might have been a better pick than Dalton. Not saying somebody else couldn't emerge it, but I'm saying right now, there's nobody that looks immediately like they were better than Dalton. Like all of these things happen under Rob Pelinka. I think either Trey Jemison or Christian Coloco should have been converted for the playoffs. So I guess that's why he didn't win Exec of the Year.
Right.
But
I will be fair to Rob. Again, I am not 100% sure this was a Rob Pelinka. I get exactly what I want all the time. I still believe until I'm told differently. I'm not saying this is what it is. It is my gut feeling that this was at least to some degree a financial choice. And I could be wrong.
Possibly.
I hope I'm wrong. But then again, I'm trying to be really careful when I say when I talk about that. just because from a basketball standpoint, it's pretty obvious that you would want somebody who isn't Alex Len to be on the roster. But I want to talk a little bit more about, the season, the Luka part of this, like how much credit for as a GM should Rob get for that trade? And then the broader question of like, okay, we've got the 6th place guy and, executive of the year voting. Like, are you more confident in Rob going into this summer than you were last summer? That's next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Like, think about it. When was the last time you had a service emergency and the first company or expert that you called didn't answer and you just waited around for them to call you back? The answer is never. You go to somebody else, and that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications, all through an app on your computer or phone. And you don't have to carry 2 phones. With Open Phone, you can manage business calls and texts from one app, whether you're at your desk or on the go. There's a shared inbox where your team can jump into any conversation without missing a beat. There's AI call transcripts and summaries that save you time on follow-ups, ensure that you never lose track of customer interaction. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you're switching from another service, Open Phone will even port your existing numbers over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers.
So it's the question that's really, I think, intriguing because, at least from a casual standpoint, you'd look at Robin. Well, he gets credit for, he got Luka Dončić. That is why he is way up there in the, top 6 guys in terms of this awards voting this year. There's also the DFS for D'Lo trade, which was a really nicely crafted deal, and all that stuff. But when you think about the grade that Rob gets, how much credit do you give him for the Luka acquisition?
I mean, in all honesty, I'd give him an A, because apparently the only thing he needed to do was keep his mouth shut, and he did. I mean, that Nico Harrison went to Rob Pelinka, and seemingly, not that there are some conflicting reports about how many other teams had been reached out to, anything like that. But it's very clear that the Lakers and Anthony Davis were one of the prime targets and prime calls for Nico Harrison. And one of the things that was very important in order to make this happen from Pelinka's perspective was keep your damn mouth shut, which he did. Like, I'm not going to dock Rob Pelinka points because he did not have to incept this idea. Like, that this wasn't the germ of his idea, that he was the one that got this thing started. Like, I don't really care.
That he didn't walk up to Nico and say, these aren't the droids you're looking for, basically, and get
exactly
and get Luka.
Like, it doesn't mean, I'm sure we'll get into this. I'm not going to give him extra credit for it having happened. I'm not going to dock him because he didn't have to pull out a bunch of bells and whistles just to get this conversation with Nico. Like, it got started how it got started. And if you want to say that Rob happened to be the lucky guy who either had Anthony Davis on his team or had a pre-existing relationship with Nico Harrison, whatever. The guidelines were keep your damn mouth shut, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
And he clearly didn't give up too much in the process.
No, apparently, depending on, again, there's so much spinning in the wake of this deal where, I think sort of the Lakers side wants to make it look like Rob did even better work than he might have. And the Dallas side wants to make it look like, okay, Nico wasn't quite the patsy that you think here. But like, depending on the report, Rob actually pulled back some assets in this deal. Like, well, you want us to give you all of that stuff for this distressed asset that you're trying so hard to get rid of? geez. And so, like, obviously, if that's true, Rob gets extra points for it. But I got to be honest with you, I'm not. It's similar to the AD part. Trading for Anthony Davis was a good move. It was the right move. It was also not a complex move. It was, you keep sort of offering stuff until David Griffin says, okay, that works.
And it was beginning because Anthony Davis was forcing his way to the Lakers, and there was a lot of pressure from LeBron and Clutch. Get this done.
Correct.
Especially after Magic bricked it the first time around.
Correct. And so it's like you did it and all that. And so it goes into your permanent record, so to speak. But this for me is kind of the same way or same thing. The question now is, how do you do the hard work? The hard work is working in the restrictions that you have. With the salary cap and with the rules about the apron and the new CBA and all these other things, the lack of draft capital that you have and all this stuff.
Rob is excited at working now in apron world. He expressed it during exit interviews he predicted that this is going to be a busy offseason.
Very busy offseason.
And the Lakers are going to be in the middle of it. Apron world, no more in terms of anxiety for Rob.
Right. But I remind you, he talked about, why didn't the Lakers make a move at the deadline a couple seasons ago? It's because we're going to keep our powder dry for the offseason. That's when we're going to be bold. And they did nothing in the offseason. And so, this is now the hard work now is where, is what they have in front of him, what Rob has in front of him. Now you have to build a roster. There's Rich Paul made some headlines this week when, he's talked about how the Lakers weren't near a championship level team. I mean, yeah, they got bounced in the first round in 5 games. Like, yes, they were obviously not anywhere close. And so you've got to bridge that gap going forward, where Rob has an incredible gift, because the job is really hard anyway now, because all these guys have hard jobs. It was borderline impossible with Anthony Davis and LeBron together, because navigating that kind of timeline, navigating the needs of these two guys and all this other stuff and the inconsistencies and, injury history, money, all that stuff going damn near impossible. Now they've reset everything where all they have to do is build around the guy that they went out to dinner with. Was it over the weekend or on Monday?
It was on Friday. They went to the hotspot Craig's in Los Angeles, a place where people go because they want to be seen. Very much so.
You raised a great question on Twitter about this meal. If you're Luka, do you order something really healthy to impress Rob and JJ at dinner, or do you order like 3 pints of ice cream, and a tub of lard, and just say, what are you going to do about it?
I'm going decadent, but I'm making sure it's for the table. Like everybody, these 4 orders of truffle fries and 2 chicken parmesans and 3 desserts, like they're for everyone. Like, extra. And
you make them eat it. I'm going to be personally insulted if you don't share.
No, it's the opposite. It's for the table, but I'm the only one eating it.
Oh, maybe. I just feel like, there's a certain level of Rob doesn't strike me as a, tub of bacon kind of guy. Like, neither does JJ, to be honest with you. But it just, all they have to do now is what matters, what is best for Luka. It's not about LeBron. And I think LeBron is fine with that. It's not about building, a group that it's going to maximize the end of LeBron's career. LeBron has to sort of figure out how to work with the Luka roster, and he's LeBron James. It won't be a problem. So the clarity that JJ and now Rob have is a gift. That is, in addition to Luka himself, is the biggest gift of that trade, is clarity. And they had none of it before, and they've got all of it now.
Rob said as much to me when I asked him about that during the Luka Dončić introductory press conference, just in terms of what it means to now have a player in the fold that gives you a runway and, a longer path to try to build. And hopefully, if they can get Luka to sign an extension, which we're going to get into next, that seems to be the consensus. Don't worry about it. But he basically described it as a gift. And I guess to put a button on this in terms of, what do I think of Rob Pelinka as an exec? If you're asking me if this season has convinced me that he's a great GM, the answer is no. He's been too up and down over the course of his time with the Lakers. The highs have been very high, but the lows have been at times inexplicably god-awful. This 1 year does not convince me that he's figured everything out. I'm not convinced that Rob is necessarily outstanding at any part of being a GM other than consolidating power, which he is awesome.
He is really good at keeping his job.
He is Game of Thrones level great at it. I am still of the mind that if a handful of execs around the league became available, Genie should let Rob go now and pick one of them up despite the money that he's now owed for an undisclosed amount of years. And I could be saying next year that the heat should be on Rob more. But if you are asking me if in the year 24-25, beginning from offseason then to where we are now, Rob Pelinka did good work, my answer is yes. Mm-hmm. I think this was a very good year for Rob Pelinka. Both things can be true.
Yeah, I think that's fair. In the meantime, it's the summer of Luka, and for the Lakers, it's the summer for Luka. We'll explain what we mean next. So at this dinner, Andy, the Lakers presumably talked about what we can do to make your life better, Luka Dončić. Help us help you. Give us the list. What's the shopping list that you want? It starts with a center, obviously, so a lob threat, somebody who can get above the rim and score in that way. He's not the only one. Rui talked about wanting a center so he can stop playing it. I think LeBron wants them to have a center so he can stop playing it. Like, they need probably more than one to come into camp next year. It can't just be Jackson.
I think we learned this season the danger of having one playable center. I think.
Well, it's like
I think two would be nice.
I'm saying if you still count Jackson as a playable guy, at least in the regular season.
I am counting Jackson in this.
Right. So you need. I think you need two in addition to Jackson.
Yes,
exactly. Go into camp.
Yes.
Where maybe Jackson becomes the third guy again. That is pretty obvious, I think. And, it doesn't require Luka to spell that out for them. But I think what the Lakers are going to continue doing is, look, they're still in the honeymoon, and not the honeymoon period. They're still to some degree in a bit of a prove it period. Like, I think Luka has every incentive to sign a shorter deal, get to 10 years in the league, and then sign something larger. Like, financially, it makes sense for him to sign something a little bit shorter. It also provides the Lakers with a little bit of flexibility because, it's a year earlier where he's going to be, they have that extra year of potential cap space and all that, so they can build again. But the Lakers, I think, need to keep doing things both from a roster standpoint and then behind the scenes that make Luka feel comfortable. They did a great job when they got him, immediately bringing in all the dudes that Dallas let go that are in Luka's inner circle that make him feel comfortable. Stuff like that matters.
I mean, Rob Pelinka went out of his way to try to bring in the lob threat and the rim running center that Luka likes with the Mark Williams deal. The physical came through, and even with the Lakers knowing that Mark Williams had injury history, there was a lot in there that they went that spooked them and made them rescind the deal. I would like to think that it was about the medicals and not cold feet or changing their mind at the last minute, because that's the type of bad business that will prevent you from getting Exec of the Year votes.
Well, he's never going to finish sixth again if it gets out. That's what they did.
But, Tim McMahon, for example, from ESPN, a friend of the show, the author of the book Wonder Boy about Luka Dončić, which we've said that before, I'll say it again. Check it out because it's a really, really good look at Luka's career and how he kind of became the guy that he is now. But Tim McMahon,
and then check out our go Google our interview. You can find it on the channel here. We did an extensive interview with Tim about Luka. That is worth great off-season listen if you missed it in the when we did it. So
absolutely. But he was on, I want to say, Dan Patrick's show and said that he would be shocked if Luka didn't ultimately sign an extension with the Lakers. Like you mentioned, the general expectation seems to be that he's going to do the shortest term one that will allow him to re-enter free agency at that 10-year service mark, a potentially 5-year, $418 million extension down that road. So, and also just as a reminder, because this is a critical offseason and Luka is obviously a big piece of this, he cannot sign this extension before August 2nd. Like, by CBA rule, he cannot do this. So you're going to have to be patient on it because if Luka's made up his mind, it doesn't matter. He can't do it. So everyone needs to know that.
So if you start to see, the summer is long, people get bored and you'll start seeing things. But he's not, I agree. I would be absolutely shocked if he went anywhere. And we talked about it this week in the context of LeBron. Like, I can see why Luka wouldn't want to go anywhere because where LeBron the fit has always been, and like, man, if I thought the comment section on Monday was sort of like a little bit like we asked the question, are more explicitly, are Lakers fans really ready to move on from the LeBron era for Tuesday's show? And it was like, people were aggressive. Like the people who are, in the yes camp on that are aggressive when it comes to LeBron. But Luka, the context around Luka being a Laker is so different. And the city, the instant embrace of Luka, the feeling of, oh my God, how lucky are we to have this guy? This was like just a gift to the Lakers, to the organization, to the fan base. He is going to be a wildly popular person in this city for as long as he chooses to be committed to the organization. And I, for one, am excited about it. One thing, though, that I know has people nervous is this notion of playing in the offseason. There's so much focus on what kind of condition Luke is going to come back in and, playing himself into the best shape of his life and all this other stuff. And a lot of fans get uncomfortable these days with international play. Luka, there is a Eurobasket this offseason in August. Is it August into September, I believe? Late August into early September.
Thank God, because we need the content.
I know. It's actually perfectly timed for us. July, a European tournament in like June and July during the draft and free agency. That is a waste. That does us no good. I'm
really hoping. My hope is that Luka, before signing an extension with the Lakers, plays in the Big Three, just because we need something, man. We really do.
Congratulations, Luka, on your tour with the Harlem Globetrotters.
I mean, actually, I want LeBron to opt out, play in the Big Three, then he can opt into the original deal that he was going to have, again, just to help us kill July.
It was like
there's only so much mileage we can get out of Bronny in summer league.
It's like the lockout when we used to, pray for somebody to show up and, play in the, in the local summer leagues and the Drew League and stuff. So, but like, there will never, this is just something that Lakers fans are going to have to get used to. It doesn't matter what is happening. Luka is injured at the end of the year. He's exhausted. The Lakers reach the finals, whatever. If there is an international tournament, Olympics, qualifiers, whatever it is, Luka's going to play. And he's going to, he will always play for Slovenia.
Yep.
And the pull there is monumentally important. And it is different. It is a different deal for Luka to, the obligation he feels to play for Slovenia. It's a different deal than like AD playing for Team USA or LeBron playing for Team USA, or quite frankly, anybody playing for Team USA.
I mean, I don't want to necessarily say anybody, because someone like Carmelo Anthony, for example, has clearly dedicated himself to.
No, I'm not saying. No, what I mean by that is not a player's desire to play for his country, which I will never criticize. I know some guys say he should rest, he should do this. It's going to get in the way of his gigantic NBA obligations or whatever. I will never criticize a guy for playing for his country. What I mean by that is Carmelo playing for Team USA is different to Americans, not to Carmelo, but to Americans.
Okay, I see.
It matters less to America than Luka playing for Slovenia.
Well, particularly for the average American NBA fan, because we tend to be very centric about our teams, and we care more about our NBA teams than we do our international teams. Right. And look, for our new Slovenian fans and audience, Zdravo, just so you understand, we are always going to, in some ways, prefer that any Laker doesn't play for, Eurobasket or Olympics or whatever, just because
you can't hurt himself. You can't get hurt if you're not playing.
We are selfish that way. Right. So just understand, it's got nothing to do with Luka. It's got nothing to do with the player themselves. We're just always thinking Lakers first. That being said, though, I will say, other than the fear of injury, which can happen, obviously, just ask Paul George, the idea of Luka Dončić at 26 in his prime, I'm not worried at all about wear and tear or adding mileage or something like. Honestly, man, if this is a concern at 26, the Lakers are kind of effed anyway. Right. I mean, really,
no, you're right.
This should not be a concern.
And the timing. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's potential upside for Luka to have to maintain his basketball conditioning for essentially an entire summer. And given the concerns about Luka, I think there is a real potential upside to that.
Well, I think the timing of it. What I was just going to say is the timing of it. We can quit after this and we'll talk more about it. But I would love, leave us in the comments at Cam Brothers, Kamenetzky Brothers at gmail.com, on the YouTube page in the comments section, especially for Luka's Slovenian fans. We really want to learn more about the significance of some of these tournaments and things like that. I will tell you, I've not been a close follower of Eurobasket in the same way that I'm going to be.
I don't even know what the hell Eurobasket is. If I'm full transparency,
big basketball tournament.
It sounds made up.
Played up with European teams. I think Slovenia is in the same group as Iceland, which I find kind of charming.
Shout out to Bjork.
Yeah. And so, I think the timing of this actually could work out pretty well because Luka, because the Lakers are out so early, he can take a month to recover, get off his feet, let his body heal. You start to get into the normal rehab work. Then you start to get into, by June, July, August, you're starting, to really ramp things up. Eurobasket kind of fits right into that, that flow. And then Eurobasket ends in September. Then you're really in that, you're already in pretty good shape and you just carry that into training camp. So if it were, I'd be more concerned if Eurobasket for some reason happened in June, where it's this huge ramp up and then you need to recover. And then so I'm cool with timing. These guys are playing basketball constantly anyway. They're working out constantly anyway. And so I don't have a problem with him doing that.
I mean, Kobe, I want to say it was his rookie year. It was either his rookie year or heading into his first year with Phil Jackson, but he hurt his hand playing.
I think that was his rookie year.
Yeah, he hurt his hand playing pickup basketball in Venice Beach. Yeah. So,
although that was sort of dumb.
But to your point that guys play,
they're playing all the time.
That's all I'm saying.
It was a very 18-year-old thing to be doing. So we're excited, but it's important to remember, Luka has rightly feels an obligation to play for Slovenia in a way that I think most American stars don't, because they shouldn't. There isn't the same level of obligation in a country like ours with a basketball history like ours versus what Luka is to Slovenian basketball. You can't compare the things. And I will not countenance, Andy, the criticism of people saying he should put the Lakers first. No, the guy's going to play for Slovenia. He should, and we all need to understand why. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with 35,000 plus subscribers. We'll see everyone tomorrow.